The one with Unagi is a really fantastic episode of Friends. Everything about this is brilliant. This is the 17th episode of the 6th season of Friends. It's directed by Gary Halvorson. And as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about the various aspects of the narrative and share some thoughts. We have part of the narrative focusing on Joey, part on Chandler and Monica, and part on Ross, Phoebe, and Rachel. And I'll talk about Joey first, then Chandler and Monica, and then Ross, Phoebe, and Rachel. And I think that's my order of preference, with, I guess, my least favourite part involving Joey. But saying least favourite doesn't sound right, because it's all tremendously enjoyable. So Joey, in the first scene, actually gets annoyed that he got only a 20% tip. He reveals he could do with some extra money. He needs headshots, and he decides to go and see if there are any medical experiments, as apparently he'd taken part in some previously. And there aren't. There is an identical twin study, but he can't take part in that. At least that's what most people would think. And I absolutely loved how they revealed the progression of this part of the narrative, because instead of telling us that Joey had met somebody and they were going to try and take part in it, we see a little bit of that. But then this person just walks into Monica and Chandler's apartment and says that he's just grabbing a soda. And thankfully, Joey was just behind him to explain it. And it's a character called Carl, played by Louis Mandylor. And he doesn't look like Joey. They've tried to dress similar, and they go down to the study, and it's very clear they're not identical twins. But I think it's fantastic. The reveal of Carl was just absolutely brilliant, with him walking into Monica and Chandler's apartment, performing as Joey, and then asking for cake, but Joey says that they like pizza, and I enjoyed it a lot. And then we come back to Monica and Chandler, and they are now celebrating Valentine's Day, and they've agreed to make the presents. And I have to say, that sounds like a terrible plan. And Chandler very much feels the same way. He doesn't know what to make. And then he happens to find a mixtape. And I had two thoughts there. My first thought was, actually, a mixtape is a pretty good gift. At the time, certainly. Second of all, he should have then used that as an idea and made his own mixtape rather than just using this one. I guess time was running out. And they exchange gifts. Monica's really happy about the mixtape. And she gives Chandler a sock bunny, which we know was made by Phoebe. And Monica apologises because Chandler clearly went to a lot of effort to make the mixtape, and she'll cook him anything he wants in the kitchen and do anything he wants in the bedroom, and it seems like everybody's happy. And then they put on the mixtape. And I would say, I've seen this episode, of course, many, many times, so I can't be certain about this. But I feel like what happens next is unpredictable, and it just makes it so funny. If anybody is watching this episode for the first time, I'd love to know, did you see this coming? I doubt I ever would have done. They put the mixtape on, they're having a slow dance, it's really beautiful. And then all we hear is Janice saying she loves the way Chandler looks every night. And just Janice's voice breaking through that romance. It was just absolutely fantastic. Needless to say, Monica is not impressed, and she's going to make Chandler cook whatever she wants in the kitchen, and she's not doing anything with him in the bedroom. And I think there's a great message here. Don't say you're going to make the presents. Unless you already make things and you're particularly creative, it's just a terrible idea. But if you are going to make something, maybe create a mixtape and buy a cassette player. That would be such a sweet gift, a cassette player with a mixtape. I don't know how you'd make a mixtape today. I don't know. I assume you'd have to buy the cassette player, and then I can't even remember how it works now. It's been so long. I'm going to not continue this thought. But either way, that's a really sweet gift for today. And I rather think that at the time, sweet gift as well. It just didn't go according to plan. But as part of the episode, really thoroughly enjoyed it. And then we come to Unagi. And this episode is, I'd say, one of the most memorable because of the Unagi aspect. Phoebe and Rachel have gone to self-defense classes. Absolutely brilliant. If anybody watches this then decides to go to self-defense classes, I think that's fantastic. As I said, I've seen this many times, and honestly, I've never once considered it. Maybe it's a good idea. But Ross tells them that there's no way they can defend themselves from an attacker after having not a lot of lessons. And they both say actually maybe they can, but Ross starts talking about Unagi and is saying that if you have Unagi, you can defend yourself. He illustrates this by screaming at Monica, who just casually walks past, and she wasn't phased, she didn't jump, because she has the Unagi. And this is another bit that I think is pretty unpredictable. Maybe we could have guessed they were going to do something, but I don't think it would have been predictable that what happened next was that Phoebe and Rachel went into Ross's apartment when he wasn't there, hid behind the curtains, and when he came in, they jumped out and screamed at him, and he screamed. Ross's scream was fantastic, proving that he doesn't have Unagi, which I rather enjoyed quite a lot. And it gets a little bit creepy because Ross decides to go to a self-defense class, and he asks the teacher, there's this scenario, and he asks the teacher, what would you do next? And of course the teacher thinks he means, what would you as somebody being attacked do next? Ross was asking for instructions on how to attack Phoebe and Rachel. I'm surprised that the instructor didn't call the police on him, to be perfectly honest. And Ross then Ross's facial expression in the final scene is brilliant, because Ross then puts it to the test. He attacks two women, and all we see is Phoebe and Rachel in Central Park watching Ross do this. Clearly Ross had jumped on the wrong people, and the women chase after him. And there's this fabulous moment when Ross runs past the window at Central Park, and he stops and freezes and does a kind of double take as he sees Phoebe and Rachel there, realising it's not them chasing him, and just his expression there was absolutely brilliant. So it's a really, really solid episode. Very, very funny. Personal highlights would have to be, I'd say there are 3 personal highlights. 4, actually. The reveal of Carl going into Monica and Chandler's apartment. Phoebe and Rachel jumping out of the curtains. And Ross seeing them in the window at Central Park. And also Janice's voice on the mixtape. But honestly, I loved every second of this episode. Really, really fantastic. The one with Unagi is a pretty perfect episode of Friends.